SHARx, a national brand ambassador, Brock Osweiler. Brock, great to have you with us today. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. And Corey, thank you so much for having me on. There's a lot of really exciting things going on with SHARx right now, so this is going to be fun to talk about.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time because you're entering into a pretty busy time of the year for you, right? You're about to get into the height of the college football season, right?
That's exactly right. Yes, week one is right around the corner. I think college football kicks off August 24th, and once that weekend comes about, there won't be much freedom in my schedule until January. But that's a good thing, and I'm used to it. You know, when football season is amongst us, it's go 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 and busy. But then there's always time to catch your breath in the off season.
Will this be season 3 for you? Third year?
Yeah, number 3 in the booth. It's amazing how fast time has gone. I've officially been out of the National Football League now for 5 years, which is funny. I didn't think it had been that long. And then you get a phone call from the insurance company on your 5th year because they're letting you know that you're getting ready to fall off of the NFL healthcare plan.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that was my reminder that I'd been out 5 years. But yes, when it comes to broadcasting, I'm going into my 3rd season. It's been a wonderful transition going from the playing field up to the booth, staying involved with the game and coaches and the players that play it. So it's been a lot of fun, and I can't wait to kick off this football season.
Looking forward to that myself, as you know, big college football fan. And I know our team is in our office, and we've got about 90 employees in our offices in St. Louis, are just over the moon excited about you being a part of this Rising Tides Army. So we'll get into that a little bit too. And, you know, before you got into the broadcast booth, you had a pretty meteoric rise. It's interesting to me, and meteoric as far as your football career, but it almost didn't happen, right? I mean, you were on your way to Spokane, Washington, were you not?
I was, yes. I was going to go play some college hoops instead of football was the original plan. You know, growing up, I loved football. It was really my first love, and I think that's because it was introduced to me first. My dad and my older brother both played football, big football fans. Every Saturday, Sunday, you know, games were on in the house from sun up till sundown. And so football was really the first sport that I was exposed to. And then as I moved through my childhood, you know, I was just a sport junkie. I'm sure just like you and so many other people, you know, anything with a ball, I wanted to go play. Football, basketball, baseball, you name it. And so when I was old enough to start playing basketball, started, you know, playing that during the winter months, and my love for basketball and football, you know, they were pretty similar. And then when I got to junior high, I was really fortunate. I went to play in what's actually the world's largest 3-on-3 basketball tournament. It's called Hoop Fest. For those that don't know, it's in Spokane, Washington, every summer, end of June. If you're into hoops, it's a fantastic experience. It's unbelievable. Just thousands and thousands of teams. But to make a long story short, went to Hoop Fest in 6th grade with a team from Montana, and we went over there and we won it. We won a division, and we ended up in the championship game beating the team from Washington. And at the end of the game, the coach came over to my parents and said, you know, we would like to extend an invitation for Brock to play on our AAU basketball team. You know, we travel around the country, we play in great tournaments, there's a lot of exposure. And so long story short, I hopped on that traveling basketball team, and the rest was kind of history when it came to hoops. We played across the country, we played against great talent, we had great talent on our teams. We had a lot of guys that went on to play Division I, even a couple guys that went on to play in the NBA. And so we had a great team, had a lot of exposure, and that's what really turned on Gonzaga to tracking me down at a young age. And believe it or not, they actually offered me a scholarship when I was a freshman in high school.
Yeah.
Now, you can't sign a scholarship. You can't sign the offer and be tied into the university. But I did. I gave him a verbal commitment that, hey, yeah, I would love to be a Zag, and I would love to go to college there. And if you think back to the time when the scholarship was offered to me, I think that was like maybe 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. Gonzaga was already on the national scene. They had already done 16 runs, but that was the year of Adam Morrison. And when he was with JJ Redick for the Player of the Year, and he had all these 40-point plus games. And so my family, I grew up in Western Montana, and the campus is about 3.5 hours from my hometown. And so we were invited as often as we wanted to go to the home games. As long as we drove and paid for ourselves to get there, the school was allowed to give me tickets.
Mm-hmm.
So, that year I just got so sucked into and fell in love with Gonzaga basketball, watching Adam Morrison and Mark Few and the rest of that team have such a successful year. I was determined that that's what I wanted to do. And then just to make a long story short, when it finally came time at the end of high school when I could sign my name on a national letter of intent, I couldn't give up playing football. I just love the game so much. I love everything that goes into it, from the team aspect to the X's and O's and the strategy and trying to outperform your opponent. I loved the fact that football is played in an uncontrolled environment, meaning outside. You might get wind, rain, snow, and everything in between. And to me, that's one of the best parts about football. So long story short, I gave Mark Few a phone call, apologized for letting him down. And, he couldn't have been greater on that call. In fact, he said to me he had a feeling that this might happen as my, recruiting kind of ramped up in football. Which came on later. I was recruited heavily in basketball early on, and football picked up later. But to make a long story short, hoops was a big part of my life for a long time, but ended up making a little turn at the crossroads and went the football route.
Well, those conversations can be a little bit, I don't know, they can feel stressful, I would imagine. And I'm guessing you had built up a pretty good rapport and relationship with Coach Few. And how did you feel as you made that phone call? We'll close the loop on this basketball conversation, but
at the time, it was the hardest phone call I'd ever made, because Coach Few, his staff, they were so good to me over the years. They made that scholarship offer as a freshman. So freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, my family had probably gone to a dozen basketball games in Spokane. And we really felt like we were a part of that community and a part of that team. And so to make that phone call, to let him know that I wasn't going to go to school there anymore. But I will say this, it probably would have been a lot different and had a different tone if I was going to continue to play basketball but go somewhere else. The fact that I was switching a sport entirely, Coach Few completely understood. And I'll say this, one of the things that made it so difficult, when you grew up in the state of Montana, which is just an incredible place to grow up, the values and the lessons that are instilled in you and that you learn growing up there are just one of a kind. But growing up in that state, there's no professional franchises. There's no NBA team, no pro football team, no hockey team. So, you slowly fall in love with the bigger schools that surround you. Well, for Gonzaga to be, of national promise when it came to basketball, and 3.5 hours away from my hometown, that was kind of the big show, if you will. So they created a lot of buzz. There was a lot of excitement from that Montana community that I was going to go out to Spokane and stay close to home. But ultimately, like I said, I loved the game of football so much. Coach Few was great on the phone call when I told him I was going to go to Arizona State, and everything worked out.
Well, other than talent, we're alike in the fact that we both love football, because when I got into high school, that's all I wanted to do. I pushed everything else aside and said, I love this so much, I just want to focus on it. So I get that. And I also spent a lot of summers in Montana, in the Missoula area. And I mean, to be in Montana and fly fish and just be outside on those warm days and jump in those cold rivers and everything that Montana has to offer, that's great. So you end up going from there, jumping on a plane, and what you chose ASU, obviously, ended up at Arizona State. I mean, other than, maybe being there in November when it was 70 degrees out and it was 10 degrees in Montana, what drew you to ASU?
Yeah, you would think that the Arizona heat would have scared me away. I took my official trip early in September when Georgia came to play ASU. That would have been September 2008. So it was still 100 plus degrees, and but the heat didn't scare me away. In fact, it drew me in. When it came to football, the final three schools that I really looked at and strongly considered was Stanford, Florida State, and Arizona State. Florida State was kind of one of my childhood favorite teams. So the fact that I was being recruited by them, received a scholarship offer, that was really hard to turn down, especially when you look at the rich history of that program and everything that they had accomplished. That was really difficult, but ultimately I chose to not go to Florida State. A big part of it was the proximity to Montana. I'm fortunate to have two great parents that support me to the end and back. And for them to go down to Tallahassee to be a part of the games from Kalispell, Montana, would have been very difficult. A lot of flights, a lot of connecting flights, and that would have been really tough on them. So one got ex-nayed. And then Stanford, I don't think my mom has ever forgiven me for not going there. She was quite upset that I was not going to go there just for the education piece alone. And rightly so. Now that I'm a parent of my own, I completely understand my mother's feelings towards that decision. Jim Harbaugh was there at the time. He really had Stanford going. They were competing in Orange Bowl, contending for national titles. So that was a tough one. But ultimately, to answer your question, Arizona State, the biggest piece to it was the fact that Dennis Erickson was the head coach. Dennis, from the Pacific Northwest, grew up in Everett, Washington, the son of a coach, played his college football in the state of Montana at Montana State University. He was a Bobcat. Had a great career at quarterback there, and then ultimately married a girl from Montana. And then his best friend is from Montana. And so there was a lot of ties to the state. There was a lot of similar circles. And so when they started recruiting me, there was a lot of commonalities. I felt very comfortable with the situation and who I was going to go, spend the next 3, 4, 5 years of my life with. And then on top of that, when you look at Dennis Erickson's track record up until that point, all he did was win. No matter where he was, if he was at Idaho, he won. If he was at Wyoming, he won. If he went to Oregon State, a program that hadn't been winning, all he does is take them to the Fiesta Bowl and have their best season of all time, 11, 12 wins. He won national titles at Miami. He was the head coach of 2 professional football teams. So when you looked at his resume, and this as an athlete and a former football player, you want to be surrounded by people that can help you accomplish your goals and get you to the next level. And I felt like Dennis was that guy. I felt like he had so much success with other quarterbacks. He's one of the inventors of the single back offense. He helped father the modern day passing game. So from a quarterback's perspective, it was a home run decision. And ultimately a decision that, looking back was arguably maybe the best of my life.
Yeah. And as I recall, was it your true freshman year? You played in a couple games. You kind of cut your teeth a little bit, and then maybe 5 or 6 games sophomore year, and ended up starting a game or 2 at the end of the season. So you're kind of getting into the swing of things a little bit there.
Yeah,
and then your junior year, boom.
Hindsight's 20/20, right? And if we all had a crystal ball to look into, life would be so different and also so easy if you had the answers to everything ahead of time. But yes, I started one game as a true freshman, and then I played in a handful of others. I'll be honest with you, I personally don't think I was ready to play. But I had faith in the coaching staff. And of course, back then, when you're 18 years old, you think you're ready to play.
Put
right?
me in. Come on.
With my knowledge now and looking back on it, there was no way I was ready to play. But I'll never forget when I showed up to day one of spring ball. I graduated high school early because I wanted to get down to ASU in the spring to be able to compete for that starting job. ASU, as I was entering the program, they just had a guy that finished being the 3-year starter at quarterback, and it was a completely wide open quarterback race going into my true freshman year, and I was part of it. And I remember when I got to campus in January of 2009, and I went into the quarterback meeting room, the depth chart was up there. And I don't know if we were supposed to see it, but it was up. And I'll never forget this. I was number 7 on the depth chart. And you want to talk about a humble pill, right? Because when you're being recruited, you're just being told how great you are and how well you're going to fit into the system and you're going to play and all these things. And then, well, they get you to campus and there's a dose of reality. So I see myself at number 7 on the depth chart. And I just told myself, all right, it's time to get to work. Nothing beats determination and hard work. And so that's what I did. Rolled up my sleeves, got to work. And by the end of spring ball and fall camp, I had worked my way up to number 2 on the depth chart. So I went into the season as the backup. Starter, he kind of had some highs and lows, wasn't necessarily consistent. And he was a senior, so he was just going to be a starter for 1 year. And he wasn't playing great. And so the coaching staff gave me an opportunity to start. Going back to now, I realize I wasn't ready, and it wasn't exactly the most friendly confines for a first career start. It was at Oregon, under the lights. I believe they were ranked.
Welcome to college football, Brock.
Welcome to college football. They were top 10 in the country. We were unranked. In fact, we had a losing year that year. We were 4-6, so we weren't great. And I'll never forget it. Jogging out onto the field for that first play of the game, and you think you're ready, and then all of a sudden you hear how loud that stadium gets. You get hit in the face a couple times. You take your first real hits of college football. Needless to say, that night didn't go very well. But a lot of lessons were learned, and I took those lessons, and I took those failures, and I used them for motivation moving forward. And just like anything in life, every situation, if you're willing to learn from it, it's going to make you better, right? And so that's what I did and moved forward, played a little bit down the stretch that freshman year. Come around sophomore year, I compete for the starting job in fall camp. I lose the battle to a Michigan transfer, Stephen Threet. He starts the majority of the year, and same deal. He had some highs and lows. We had some good games, some bad games. We were about 500 on the year. And going into the second to last game, he's still the starter, gets knocked out in the first quarter with a concussion. I think we were down maybe 17 points or 14 points to UCLA. It was senior day. And I go in, and fortunately, sometimes the stars align, as you know, whether it's in football or maybe on the golf course when the swing feels good. And the stars align. And I played one of my best games, actually, of my entire career. That day. Threw for a bunch of touchdowns, brought us back from behind, threw for a bunch of yards, ended up being the Pac-10 player of the week that week. We sent the seniors out on the right note. They got a big win on senior day. And that performance is what gave Dennis Erickson, I think, the confidence to announce me the starter for the next week against our rival Arizona down in Tucson. Unfortunately, we won that game in double overtime. It was a tremendous team effort. I didn't play great, but I played with a lot of grit and some fiery energy, and we were able to get that win. And then after that win, Coach Erickson named me the starter right away going into the next season. And then same deal, rolled up the sleeves, got back to work, and had a good junior year. I'll be honest with you, I ended up declaring for the NFL draft after my junior year, but really had no intentions of doing that. I'd only started 15 games at that point in time, and I wanted to come back to school. I knew I had things to learn, things to improve upon, but unfortunately our entire coaching staff got fired at the end of that year, and I had a tough decision to make. Hang around with a new coaching staff that I didn't know, didn't have any relationships with, it was kind of an up and coming coaching staff, so there wasn't a lot of history on them and their system and things like that, or declare for the NFL. And, made a decision, declared, and the rest is history.
Well, we make the best decision we can in the moment we're in, right? And, we all kind of come to those crossroad or fork in the road moments, and you look back and say, okay, well, yeah, I felt like it was time to move on, and ultimately, your second round draft pick for the Broncos ended up. What year in that was Manning there when you first got there? Because they had signed him as a free agent that year, if I recall, when you got drafted.
That's correct. He got to town in free agency about a month before me, and then I was drafted and brought in right after him.
So I would think, coming in, he's like, oh, this is great, right? Because you're not going to be walking in the door and they're expecting you to play, and you can be mentored by one of the top 5 quarterbacks, probably arguably to ever play the game.
Right.
And so I would imagine you walk in feeling like this is a great situation, right?
Yes and no. It's the yes is, initially you're excited about that opportunity. You realize what Peyton Manning had done up to that point in his career, and that you're going to get the opportunity to sit in a room with him, be around him, and learn, and just be a sponge and get all of those notes and get all of that advice. But then the competitor kicks in,
Sure.
and you want to play. You're not there to just learn and take notes. Every competitor wants to be out there on the field, competing and making a difference for their team. So I'll say this, for the first half of my rookie season, if not maybe the full season, it was an unbelievable experience, and the amount that I learned and how much I matured in that first year, and everything that went with that experience of being, in the same room of as one of the greatest of all time. It was priceless. But I didn't get my first career start in the regular season until my 4th year in the NFL.
Wow.
And I'll say this: year 2 and 3, it was really hard. It's hard to put in all the work that you put in throughout an off season, and then through spring ball, and then through summer workouts, and then training camp. And what people forget is, if you're doing your job, the correct way as a backup, you're preparing just as much as the starter. You're doing all the weightlifting sessions. You're doing all the film work. You're doing all the studying. You're doing everything that the starter does. The only difference is you don't get the cake at the end of the week, and you don't get to go play on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And as a competitor, that's really difficult. But I'll say this: it taught me a lot about patience.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard in the moment, but the lessons learned from that time period are invaluable. Things that I'll be able to pass on to my kids and also use in my life moving forward. Although, going into the same position room as Peyton Manning every day was just incredible as far as the knowledge I was able to gain, eventually it became very hard to continue to sit and be a backup.
Is he someone that you keep in contact with these days, or is it kind of a time and place?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, Peyton and I, we have a great relationship. We always have. I think both of us just have so much mutual respect for how each of us went about our business, whether that would be in the season or out of the season. And we absolutely remain in contact, good friends today. And, the thing about him is he's always been so great to me. Anytime, I really needed him for something, whether it was something while I was playing, maybe it was while I was playing after he retired, or even today, whether it be something with business or whatever it may be. He's always been there. He's always been in my corner, and that's something I really appreciate.
It was that was the 4th season then you're there, and was that 2015? And so Broncos are rolling along pretty good, and then Peyton is a game where he really he was probably injured, but he threw 3 or 4 interceptions, and now you go in this game. It was against the Chiefs, if I recall.
Was, yeah.
I don't recall the outcome of that game. But after that, you're playing some playing some ball and playing it. I mean, Peyton has some. He probably thanks you for having that one more ring on his finger.
2015 was a special year in Denver. It just really was. Ultimately we won the Super Bowl at the end of the season, but going back through that season, you knew it was special just going back to the very first week of the season. We didn't always, especially that first half of the year, we didn't necessarily play the prettiest, most exciting football on offense. We did what we needed to do to stay in games, to win games. But the way we played as a team, the defense was so special. The special teams were special, no pun intended. And then the offense just fought as a group. And that team was very, very, very close. In fact, probably the most close team when it comes to relationships and having one another's back and pushing each other and the leadership. Extremely special group. And you're right. I took over as the starter halfway through the season. At the time, we were battling with a few other teams. Cincinnati, New England was undefeated. I believe when we played them, they were 12-0 or 13-0. There was a few teams that we were really pushing to try to get that number one seed in the playoffs with. And it was just special. Going back to my first career start halfway through that season in the NFL, I never knew when my first start was going to come. But what I did know is whenever it did come, whether it was year 1, 2, 3, 4, whenever that was going to be, I was going to be prepared for it. And I was going to be ready for that moment. Because as you know, in life, you're not guaranteed many opportunities, especially opportunities that can be life-changing and extremely special moments. And so I always made sure I was going to be ready to go. So when I found out I was going to be the starter midway through the season, I think it was week 9 in Chicago, I was prepared and I was ready to go. And it ultimately didn't seem like that big of a deal to me. It just seemed like another work week. And it was great. The team rallied around me. I did my job. They did their job. And we went on to have a really, really good second half of the season. We went from kind of bottom half of the league statistically in offense to the top half. We started scoring more points. Defense continued to play great. Special teams was great. My second career start, going back to the undefeated Patriot team I was talking about, we played on Sunday Night Football in Denver. You want to talk about a childhood dream. Growing up in Montana, you watch the Seahawks, you watch the Broncos, you watch the Packers, Vikings. So you see all these stadiums November, December just covered in snow, and you're like, gosh, that looks like so much fun. And well, here you go. My second career start. Here comes the defending world champions, undefeated Patriots. Snow starts falling, Sunday Night Football. It was just a dream scenario. And I was going to make the most of that moment. And going back to it, the team just played tremendous. Everybody did their job. Everyone had one another's back. We ended up winning that game in overtime. And ultimately, that was the difference of New England being the 2 seed in those playoffs, and we were the 1 seed. And so that game mattered a heck of a lot. And so in the AFC Championship, when that rolled around in January, New England had to come to us, which was great. I'm not going to sit here and say that we could have gone to Foxborough and beat them or not beat them, but I know this because I played back in Foxborough enough. That's a place you don't want to play. And you don't want to play, especially in the playoffs. It's cold. It's dark. Brady, Belichick, they just had such an incredible winning percentage in that stadium. That was a place you didn't want to go. So the fact that we had home field advantage, we had our fans, that was a big deal.
That season and watching it unfold with Peyton Manning there was, I remember thinking, wow, this is like watching the Baltimore teams when Trent Dilfer was the quarterback and won the Super Bowl. And you would have never thought of Peyton getting to a point where he's managing a game, so to speak, because he was the game. He is the game. And the team really changed offensively for that time when you got in. I think I remember reading about the point where you ultimately got pulled and Peyton was back to health again, right? And I'd love to hear that story because as I recall, you going in and as a competitor like you are and knowing a little like what that feeling is of giving everything you could possibly give, and then ending up with, where it ended up with Coach Kubiak there in that moment you guys had after the game. Love to hear about that.
It's easy to talk about now, but in the moment, it ripped my heart out. So week 17, we were playing the Chargers at home, and as long as we beat the Chargers that day, we secured the number 1 spot for the playoffs. And the week before, we just had an emotional victory over Cincinnati, who was also fighting for the number 1 playoff spot. It was Monday Night Football. We beat them in overtime. So that was an emotionally draining and physically draining game. And then you turn around on a short week, got to beat the Chargers at home, and you secure home field playoffs. We go out there, first series of the game, throw a touchdown pass. We're rolling. We're up 7-0. And ultimately had a big first half. And in fact, I think I almost threw for 300 yards in the first half alone. The issue with that game is we had some sloppy turnovers. And I think the team coming off of, like I was saying, such an emotional game 6 days prior against the Bengals on Monday Night Football, I don't know if we were mentally ready to go. And the game was sloppy for us on offense. We had a couple turnovers and guys that just don't normally turn the ball over. I'm talking Pro Bowl players. And with that, I'm sure, and I trust him with everything. Our head coach, Gary Kubiak, he needed to make a call. And I think he got this sense that, okay, we're kind of fighting along with the Chargers. We should be pulling away. We've been in the red zone a couple times, whether it was fumbles or whatever it was. We have these turnovers. We're playing a little bit of sloppy football. I need to ignite the team somehow. I need to send in a new sense of energy. And so it was hard. Like I said, it ripped my heart out. But all of a sudden we're on the sideline and Coach Kubiak decides to make a switch and sits me down and in goes Peyton. And I will say this, it worked. Coach Kubiak made a great call as a head coach. There was a new sense of energy out there. The offensive line all of a sudden started clicking, and the run game got going. I remember C.J. Anderson busted open a couple big 20, 25-plus yard runs. And so that mojo did come about, and I understand that. Well, as you can imagine, and like you said, as a competitor, when you pour your entire self, your heart, your body, your mind, your soul, you name it, into this football team and a team that means a lot to you, a team that drafted you, teammates that you love, coaches that you love, and you get pulled out and you feel, I mean, I can't even go into the feelings that hit you. But it was really hard. And so after the game, Coach Kubiak, just being the tremendous human being that he is, as well as a coach, came and grabbed me right away as soon as we got to the locker room and goes, "Hey, come visit with me." And he took me back to his specific office in the locker room, and we sat down, and it was really emotional in there. And we talked for a while. And he's the best. He's the ultimate leader. He's like a second father. He's also your coach. Yeah, he's the guy. A lot of people say that they would run through a brick wall for. I would run through a brick wall for that man. And a lot of it is how he handled that situation. It's pretty cool. We can laugh and joke about it now. Obviously, I couldn't say anything back then, but just being the guy that he is, handed me a couple beers after our conversation, said, "Hey, take a minute in here, decompress, stay in here as long as you want." He's like, "I got to go do my press conference. I know you're going to have to do one right after me." But just he was great about it. Obviously, that was a very difficult situation. He handled it as good as it probably could have been handled. And then just to put a little cherry on top of about how great of a coach Gary was and is, he called me later that night as well. He called me, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 p.m. It was late. I know that. And he just, before I went to bed that night, he just wanted to make sure I was in a good headspace, or as good as I could be. And I thought that was really cool, because there are a lot of coaches out there that wouldn't have done that. Right. It's just about business for them.
Next thing.
Exactly it. Where Gary, he cared about you, and that meant a lot. And ultimately, that says why our team was so special, because we felt that from him, and we didn't want to let him down on Sundays. And I know I think I can speak for that entire 2015 Broncos team.
So how many beers did you drink before you went and did that press conference, and how did that one go?
We're not going to give an exact quota, but we'll say we did some good damage in a very short amount of time, and yeah, it was, like I said, it was one of those deals where, I had waited 3.5 years to play, and ultimately to be the guy in Denver. That's what I was drafted to be whenever Peyton decided to hang it up. And so 3.5 years later, you're still waiting for your opportunity to play, and you finally get it. And then it's, you're on top of the world, right? You win your first career start, your AFC player of the game, second career start. You beat Tom Brady, the undefeated Patriots, Sunday Night Football. Third start, beat Phillip Rivers. Monday Night Football, win that one in overtime to secure all these things, and you got it rolling, and it's finally your time, and you're living in that moment, and you're loving your teammates, and you're enjoying the ride. And then in a couple seconds, it's pulled away from you. And boy, I can't even tell you the emotional roller coaster that was. But I will say this: took a few days to get over that, and then ultimately from that point moving forward, because there was a big discussion over the course of the next 2 weeks who was going to start the playoffs. We had the first round bye, but after that, is Peyton starting or am I starting? And that was something John Elway, Gary Kubiak had to hash out amongst each other. And it took them about a week. Peyton and I just split reps in practice. We didn't know who was going to be the guy. And I'll be honest, by the end of that week, I didn't even care. Of course I wanted to play. What an incredible opportunity to get to start games in the playoffs. We knew we had, the potential to win a championship. But my biggest thing once we got to game week, I just wanted to win. That football team meant so much to me, and all of those guys were so much more important than my own individual self.
Yeah. And I can't worry about the things you can't control, right? And
that's right.
As I've told you a couple times, I've been around enough athletes, and I really applaud you in that. You're just a guy that is, from the first day I met you, it's not really just about you. I mean, you take as much interest in me and who I was and what I do and the things that of the other guys in our foursome or who we're out to dinner with or whoever we're sitting around the table with, as you do with, what you've accomplished at a high level in your own career. So I would imagine when you found out you weren't starting that playoff game, you turned to legend Peyton and like, let's go. What do we got to do? Is that a little bit what do you need from me?
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. In fact, I said it to Gary, I said it to Peyton. I said, hey, whatever, let's just go win this damn thing. Whatever it takes, I'm here. Let me know. On a lighter note, we win the AFC Championship game, and Peyton and I are visiting the next day. And when you play in a Super Bowl, you go out a week early, and so you'll fly out there on like a Sunday morning before 7 days later the Sunday game. So Sunday night is kind of your night to do whatever. Go blow off some steam, have some fun, celebrate that you're in the Super Bowl. And the real work doesn't really begin until Wednesday. You have some media obligations Monday, Tuesday, some light workouts, but Wednesday's the real practice day. So Sunday night is all about going out, having a good time, have a good dinner. So Peyton and I are visiting the next day, and him and I are kind of visiting. All right, what should we do? Who should we take? I go, listen, you focus on winning the game, okay? I'll be right there with you too. I'll be ready to go in case something happens. But let me get this Sunday night dialed in. So between Peyton and I, we put together a pretty good Sunday evening for the entire offense that was out there.
Love it.
Yeah, good memories.
Well, the rest is history there, and there's a lot more to talk about, and we'll wrap up here shortly today because I think all things go well, we'll keep these conversations up over the college football season. We'll get to check in a little bit with what's going on there in the college football world and your broadcasting. But I look at it and go, I think you started 30 games in your career, and you were 15-15, and the expectation that is placed on a young guy that is supposed to, everybody expects to be an incredible quarterback. I mean, I look back in the little bit that I walked on Division I football, and even the time I went from the first fall season into, like, I'm lost. It's like this whirlwind stuff coming at you, and then spring, it's like this clarity, this light starts to come in. And then I was never going to get a scholarship there, but I felt like I was starting to fit in, but I knew I needed to transfer to D2. And then it's all over. And you start all over again. And my only point in saying this is we'll get into later some other time, like, moving to, when you went to Houston, but it's a really short window of time. And then you're moving around, and all of a sudden, I would think new system, new terminology, even though the game's the same.
Yeah.
It's like, holy cow, and you really started less than 2 full seasons, and you played a lot of really good football in a short amount of time.
Yeah, Corey, I would say this. Having success in the National Football League as a quarterback is extremely difficult. I don't think I'm biased in saying this. I think it's been publicly recorded by enough people. Playing quarterback in the NFL is probably the hardest position in all professional sports. There's a lot going on. You're getting hit while doing it. There's a lot to know. There's a lot to do. So in order to have that success, look at the best, right? They have a lot of tools around them. Football is the ultimate team game, and that phrase is there for a reason, because it is. In order for you to have success as a quarterback, you need the other 10 guys on offense to be doing their job at a high level on the same page as you. You need to have a good offensive scheme behind you. You need to have a good play caller that's calling those plays at the right time, right moment to put you in position to have success. Yeah. And then ultimately it's your job to execute. You need to have a defense that helps you play the field position game, special teams. It takes the total package to have success, which is why I think in this day and age, especially with the 24/7, 365 news cycle that creates so much added pressure and extra eyeballs and attention and media scrutiny, it is just, you see very few quarterbacks staying in the same place for a long time. It's just so hard to do it. And I think very few organizations put that package around their young quarterbacks in order to have success. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure these things out. If you look at certain situations, you can say, well, hey, that guy's the best. Well, look at what's around him. Who's his play caller? Does the scheme fit, the physical traits that he has and what he does best? Or is that quarterback playing in a system where the coach doesn't necessarily bend and mold things to that quarterback's specific qualities, or is he forcing the quarterback to try to match his system? There's so many factors that go into having success in the NFL. It can make your head spin.
Yeah, well, I just want to say how excited we are that you are a part of our team, and looking forward to more of these conversations, because I think what we go through and how we get to where we get to that's really what it's all about. I mean, you go through these experiences, we all have them, and you can either get better or be bitter because things didn't go exactly the way you want to, whatever situation you're in life. And, it's like, what lens are you looking at things through? And so for our team, we were really excited about the press release of you being part of Rising Tide's Army, and what we think is this grassroots movement. And kind of to put things on a bow today, when we first started talking about what we do, you asked me what we do as a company, and then you're, maybe a couple visits later, you're like, I gotta introduce you to a buddy of mine who's got some companies you could really help. And those things worked, and we were making a difference in the lives of their employees and their families. And then it kind of came full circle to, you know what, we got a chance to really grow this grassroots movement. And so over the next few weeks, we'll start to introduce some of the other ambassadors, and it's it is a privilege, honestly, because to have you on our team, and I know at a much smaller level what it takes to have success as an athlete, and that kind of thing, and that you accomplished and what you accomplished at the highest level, and knowing what it takes to get there is also what it takes for us to accomplish the kind of change that we want to accomplish in this sphere of influence in the prescription drug world.
Well, Corey, I love what you said about a minute ago. And to your point, I was really fortunate, and I hope he ends up in the Hall of Fame one day. He's not there, but in my opinion, he deserves it. But my first head coach in the NFL was John Fox. And Coach Fox used to say something to me all the time. And he'd say, hey, rookie. He goes, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You never stay the same. So from day to day, make a choice. Are you getting better or are you getting worse? And I hope you're getting better. So what are you doing, and what is your plan to get better? And so that's something that's never left me. I'm trying to be a lifelong learner. I try to learn something new every single day. I try to surround myself with people that make me better, that teach me things, that inspire me, that push me to be a better person. And that's why when you and I first met and I got to know what you're doing and your why, as to why you guys are doing what you're doing. I think that's a big thing in life. You ask somebody, well, why are you doing this? What is your why? What is your purpose? And to know that there's so many families out there that are benefiting from this SHARx program and what you guys do and what you provide, that's inspiring and that's special. And I'm a firm believer that life's hard and life's really hard for a lot of people out there. And so if there's an avenue to make their life a little bit easier and to help them out and to help their children out and their family members, that's what it's all about. Folks helping folks. And you guys are certainly doing that.
Well, thank you for that. Our motto, I guess our slogan with Rising Tides is, when enough is enough, an army shall rise. And I think that we have a lot of distribution partners and employers, clients, prospective clients that, we want them to feel like you feel and like we feel, that we're all part of a team here that can accomplish some amazing things if we just put our head down and say, this is not right. This 422% more that Americans pay for prescription drugs, when, 17 drugs, the U.S. spent more than the rest of the world combined on the top 17 specialty meds. And there's 194 other countries. So I look at these things and say, yeah, we got a lot to do. And when we start bringing in some of the opportunities and the influencers like you and the passion that you have when you dig into something, because I know you didn't get involved with us lightly or just say, this has led to us sitting here today and to establish a routine to do it so that people know, well, you're not like you need something to do. You got plenty of stuff to do in your life and a family that you are committed to and all the other things you have going on.
And the power of team, right? The power, the one of the best examples I've ever seen is, hey, this palm, this hand can be powerful, but nothing's more powerful than this, right? So when you bring them together and you work as one, you inspire one another, you motivate one another, you challenge one another, you learn from the other person, that's when something special happens. And that's what's happening at SHARx and the Rising Tide Army.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you. Looking forward to you sharing more of your story with us. And, you've got an amazing family and what your outlook on things, even though maybe things didn't end up right the way you wanted to in your pro career, is nothing less than just something to be emulated. And so really appreciate that and looking forward to more conversations, and greatly appreciate the time today, Brock, and so glad you're a part of Rising Tides.
Well, hey, I'm glad to be here. I can't wait for our next one. I think our next chat will talk a little bit about some college football, maybe pro football, and some other things that are going on. So I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, my friend. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Corey. You too.
See you, buddy.